The stars were silent, their cold, distant light casting shadows on the alien ship as it limped through the void. The vessel, once a symbol of pride and power for the Zaurians, now appeared battered and broken, its hull scarred by the ravages of an endless war. The Zaurians were not just fleeing from battle. They were escaping extinction. Their homeworld had been reduced to ashes, their empire shattered by an unstoppable force, and now they drifted across the galaxy in search of the one thing they could not give up: hope. On Earth, the humans had noticed the arrival of the strange ship long before it reached their atmosphere. The United Nations, along with the world's top space agencies, had scrambled to track the unidentified object. It wasn't just an ordinary ship. It was huge, far larger than any vessel humanity had ever constructed. It drifted toward Earth with a slow, purposeful pace, its intent unclear. For days, Earth's leaders debated what to do. Some argued for immediate military action. After all, what could they know about this alien race? Others called for diplomacy, remembering that Earth had no enemies out there in the cosmos. Yet, after a tense and uncertain period, a decision was made. An emergency assembly was called, and humans put aside their differences. This would be a defining moment for Earth. This was their chance to show the galaxy what humanity was made of. The aliens, however, were not prepared for the warmth of their reception. When they finally made contact, the Zaurian ambassador, a tall, emaciated figure with violet skin and eyes that shimmered like distant stars, expected to be greeted with suspicion, perhaps even hostility. Instead, the humans offered a simple, unmistakable gesture: refuge. The meeting took place in a vast hall, the best humanity could offer. The walls were adorned with the banners of the world's nations, each symbolizing the unity that had been forged over the years. The air was thick with anticipation as the Zaurian ambassador stood before a table, flanked by representatives of Earth's leadership. Behind them, the humans held a simple yet powerful message in their eyes: "We are not here to conquer. We are here to help. We came seeking shelter." The Zaurian spoke, his voice hoarse, carrying the weight of generations who had died in battle. "Our world is gone. Our people are scattered. We have nothing left." The human leader, a woman of indeterminate age with silver streaks in her hair, smiled gently. "You are welcome here." The words hung in the air, a bridge between two species that had never before met, but now shared a mutual understanding of survival. "What do you want in exchange?" the ambassador asked, his voice trembling with the weariness of his people. The leader's smile deepened. "Nothing." There was a long pause. The ambassador looked at the humans skeptically, unsure whether to believe them, but the humans didn't flinch. The room was filled with silence, the weight of the moment heavy on both sides. The leader motioned to her side, where a human engineer, holding what looked like a sleek metallic device, stepped forward. "We offer you shelter, food, and protection," she said. "But we also offer you something else. Something that might help you fight your war. Weapons, yes, but not just any weapons. These are Earth's finest creations, capable of turning the tide in any battle." The ambassador's eyes widened. The offer was unexpected, too unexpected. The Zaurians had never heard of such generosity, let alone of weapons being offered so freely. Their experience with other species had been one of mistrust and manipulation. They had assumed that any interaction with another race would come with a price. But the humans were different. They had known war. They had survived extinction. They understood the cost of peace. With a cautious hand, the Zaurian ambassador reached out and accepted the device. The humans hadn't just given them weapons. They had given them a chance to rebuild, a chance to survive. And yet, the ambassador couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more behind the humans' offer. He glanced at the leader, whose expression was calm but inscrutable. "Why?" the ambassador asked. The human leader's smile never wavered. "Because we have been where you are. We understand loss. And because, in the end, the strength of a people isn't how they fight, isn't how they help." The days following the meeting were filled with a cautious optimism. The Zaurians had been granted safe passage to Earth, and the shelters established for them were vast and secure. Despite the human assurances of peace, however, something lingered in the air, a subtle tension that could not be ignored. The Zaurians were a broken people, their confidence shattered along with their homeworld. And though they were grateful for the refuge, they couldn't help but feel wary. What was it that humans truly wanted? The weapons offered were powerful, advanced, far beyond what the Zaurians had ever seen. Why would Earth, a species so young in the galactic scale, offer them such power without asking for something in return? In the quiet of their new home, the Zaurians gathered, their leaders whispering among themselves, their thoughts darkened by years of survival and war. Theirs was a race of pragmatists. Everything had a price, even kindness. The humans had given them a place to rest. Yes, but what would they want when the war inevitably arrived on Earth's doorstep? The Zaurians had seen too many worlds fall to believe that peace could ever be more than an illusion. Commander Zarek, a veteran of the Zaurian military, stood near the window of his temporary quarters, staring out at the human cityscape. The sight was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Earth's city sprawled beneath him, teeming with life, as if the war, the death, and the destruction were foreign concepts to them. Zarek couldn't help but wonder, were the humans truly as naive as they appeared, or was there something deeper, something more dangerous hidden beneath their kindness? The humans had offered them protection, but what would they ask in return? It wasn't just the weapons that troubled Zarek. It was the quiet strength of the humans. They had offered not only technology but knowledge, strategies, and a willingness to share their military resources. Zarek's people had always believed that strength came from sheer force, from domination and control. But the humans had something different: unity, resilience, and an unwavering belief in their ability to rebuild, to recover, and to fight, no matter the odds. It was that very belief that made them both formidable and unsettling. As the Zaurians began to adjust to their new surroundings, they slowly started to integrate into human society. Some became part of the Earth military, training with human soldiers, while others took to the labs, learning about human technology and working alongside Earth scientists. Slowly, the refugees began to see that humanity's strength did not solely lie in its weapons. There was something more. The humans had an unyielding will to survive, a refusal to bow to adversity. The Zaurians watched as humans, who had endured extinction-level events, rebuilt their world time and time again. But as the weeks went by, doubt still lingered. Among the Zaurians, there were whispers. Some questioned whether they had traded one form of subjugation for another. Others feared that the humans might have ulterior motives. After all, they had been so generous, so open, it seemed almost unnatural. Were the humans testing them, preparing for something they had yet to reveal? And there were those who wondered about the leader of the humans, the woman who had first extended the offer of refuge. Her calm demeanor and reassuring words had led the Zaurians to believe that she was an embodiment of Earth's compassion. But Zarek and his fellow commanders had met with her several times since their arrival, and each time her eyes carried a glimmer of something harder, something sharp. It was as though she had seen the horrors of the universe and accepted them without question. And in that acceptance, she had become stronger. As the doubts began to spread, the humans too felt a creeping unease. There were moments of awkwardness between the two species, small things, at first. The Zaurians hesitated to engage with the humans, unsure of their motivations. A quiet wariness simmered just beneath the surface. The humans, on their part, were trying to be patient, but the uncertainty of the situation hung like a dark cloud. Human soldiers, trained to maintain peace and uphold their ideals of justice, found themselves questioning how far they should go in trusting their new alien allies. They had welcomed the Zaurians with open arms. But now, as the realities of the situation set in, some began to ask, what if the Zaurians were only here to take advantage of their hospitality? What if, one day, the humans woke up to find that their refugees had become their conquerors? Despite the mounting tension, the human leader, General Lena Voss, remained resolute. She knew that in order for this fragile alliance to survive, she would have to bridge the gap of trust that had formed between the two races. The Zaurians were no strangers to war, and they carried with them centuries of battle-hardened knowledge. Lena understood that if this alliance was to succeed, they needed to see that humanity's kindness was not a weakness, but a strength, a weapon in its own right. One afternoon, as tensions were high, Lena made a decision. She would meet with the Zaurian ambassador personally. It was time to break through the walls of suspicion and show the Zaurians that humans weren't just offering them a place to hide. They were offering them a partnership, a chance to stand together against the darkness. "Tell me about your people," Lena asked the ambassador, sitting across from him in a quiet, secure room. "I want to understand what you've lost, so that I can make sure we never lose it again." The ambassador, for the first time since his arrival, softened. He looked at Lena, his expression guarded but thoughtful. "We have lost everything. Our homes, our families, our history." Lena nodded, her voice steady. "And now you have the chance to rebuild. With us, not as refugees, but as equals. We can help you find what you've lost. But in return, we need your trust." The Zaurian ambassador met her gaze, his eyes still filled with doubt, but also something else, an understanding that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just the weapons that made this alliance possible. It was a human's willingness to offer something far rarer: trust. The first true test of humanity's offer came sooner than anyone anticipated. It began with a warning, a faint ripple in the vast expanse of space. For the past few months, Earth had enjoyed an uneasy peace, but that tranquility was shattered by the arrival of a far more dangerous enemy. The enemy fleet was vast, its ships massive and brutal. They were unlike anything the Zaurians had ever seen, designed for destruction in the most unforgiving way possible. The warlords of Karath Dominion, an ancient and bloodthirsty empire that had swept across the galaxy, had finally caught wind of the Zaurian refugees on Earth. The humans had prepared. General Lena Voss had not been idle in the months following the arrival of the Zaurians. Earth's military had trained alongside their new allies, sharing strategies and refining their technology. In return, the Zaurians had contributed their advanced knowledge of space warfare, offering insights into tactics that had previously been exclusive to their race. But even with the combined might of Earth and Zaurian forces, no one was under any illusion about the scale of what was to come. When the Koroth fleet emerged from the shadows of a nearby nebula, Earth's monitoring systems were ready. The Koroth had arrived with one purpose: to eradicate the Zaurian presence on Earth. They were not just coming to conquer, they were coming to destroy, and they would stop at nothing to accomplish it. General Voss stood before a massive tactical screen, her eyes scanning the incoming enemy vessels as they appeared on the holographic map. The room around her was silent, save for the hum of the machine and the occasional murmur of her officers. The weight of the situation pressed down on them all. "Do we have time to mobilize?" one of the commanders asked. "No," Lena replied, her voice cold and calm. "We fight now." The decision had been made. The humans would stand their ground. But this time, they wouldn't fight alone. This time, they would fight with their new allies, the Zaurians, who had brought their advanced weapons and strategic expertise to Earth's defense. Their ships were already in orbit, ready to launch. Zarek, the Zaurian commander, stood at the helm of his ship, a sleek vessel now outfitted with human technology. He was no longer a reluctant guest. He was a leader in a united front. His people had been broken, scattered, and lost. But now, with the humans standing beside them, they had something they hadn't had in centuries: hope. "This is it," Zarek said, his voice steady over the comms. "The Koroth will not show mercy. We will have to give everything we have to survive." His crew, a mix of Zaurians and humans, nodded in agreement. Each one of them knew the stakes. The battle began with a flash. The Koroth fleet moved in fast, their warships unleashing salvo after salvo of high-energy plasma. The force of the attack sent shockwaves through Earth's atmosphere, shaking the ground below. The Zaurian and human fleets engaged immediately, their ships dancing around each other in the chaos of battle. Earth's weapons were powerful, but the Koroth had an overwhelming force. Their ships were vast, their firepower unmatched in sheer destructive potential. Zarek's ship, the Iron Spear, darted to the fray, dodging enemy fire while returning it in kind. The human weapons, though powerful, were relatively new to the Zaurians. But in the heat of battle, there was no time for hesitation. Zarek issued orders with precision, coordinating with Lena's forces in the combined fleet. It was a dance of destruction, each ship moving with deadly intent, their weapons a blur of light and energy. Zarek's ship took a direct hit, shaking the vessel to its core. The shields flickered. The system screamed in warning, but the crew held steady. Zarek gritted his teeth, his fingers flying over the console, giving orders and making adjustments faster than the damage could register. His crew worked in tandem, humans and Zaurians side by side, unflinching in the face of the chaos. Evasive maneuvers. Zarek barked, his voice commanding. Activate countermeasures. Get us to the flank of their battleship. The Zaurians, though still grieving the loss of their empire, fought with a passion and fury that only the experience of loss could produce. They fought not just for survival, but for the chance to rebuild, to prove that they were not a defeated race, but one that could rise from the ashes. With the humans fighting alongside them, the bond between the two species grew stronger with each passing moment. It was no longer just an alliance. It was a partnership. The battle raged for hours, each minute feeling like an eternity. The Karath were ruthless, their ships not just weapons but harbingers of death. But the humans, the Zaurians, they fought with fire that the Karath couldn't understand. Every time the enemy thought they had the upper hand, the humans and their allies found a way to turn the tide. By the time the battle reached its climax, the Karath fleet was in retreat. Their flagship, a massive war cruiser, had been severely damaged and their forces were scattered. The humans and Zaurians had won, against all odds. Earth's skies were still lit with the fire of battle, but the Karath had been driven back. The Zaurians, though exhausted and scarred, stood victorious. On the command bridge of the Iron Spear, Zarek let out a slow breath, the adrenaline still pumping through his veins. He looked around at his crew, humans and Zaurians, each of them battered, but standing strong. They had done it. They had faced the darkness together, and they had emerged victorious. Lena's voice came over the comms, steady and sure, even in the aftermath of the battle. "We've won, Zarek." But this was just the beginning. Zarek nodded, his expression grim. "I know, but this is what we've been waiting for. This is what humanity promised us. You didn't just offer us weapons. You offered us a chance to fight for something bigger than ourselves." Lena's voice softened, "And you gave us the strength to do it." As the last of the Karath ships disappeared into the distance, Earth's citizens watched in awe. The first test had been passed, and the humans had not only survived, but had proven that they could stand shoulder to shoulder with their new allies, united in purpose and spirit. The galaxy would take notice. The humans, with their smiles and their weapons, had shown the universe the meaning of survival and the price of peace. The skies above Earth were quiet again. For the first time in months, the stars glimmered without the scars of battle. No debris fields drifting between the clouds, no fire streaking through the upper atmosphere. The Great War had ended, and though the wounds it would take generations to heal, there was peace. Fragile, uncertain peace, but peace nonetheless. The Karath fleet was gone, broken, scattered, humiliated by a world they considered primitive. And the Zaurians, once refugees running from annihilation, now stood shoulder to shoulder with the humans who had given them more than refuge. They had been given purpose. They had been given a home. Commander Zarek stood upon the observation deck of the newly built orbital station Unity's Edge, a joint project between Earth and Zauria survivors. The station was massive, an elegant weave of human steel and alien crystal. Every corridor and viewport a symbol of what two species could create together. Below, Earth shimmered like a blue jewel, its oceans calm and endless. He watched as human and Zaurian engineers worked side by side in the hangar bays, repairing ships that bore both banners. No one could tell at a glance where human craftsmanship ended and Zaurian design began. It was one, a single, shared creation born from the fires of war. For the first time in many years, Zarek felt something close to peace. Behind him, footsteps echoed lightly. General Lena Voss approached, her uniform crisp, her expression as composed as ever. She carried a datapad under one arm, but her eyes weren't on it. They were fixed on the same view, the world below, whole and alive. "I thought I'd find you here," she said quietly. Zarek gave a faint smile. "You humans have a habit of finding people when they want to be alone." "Maybe," she replied, "but I've learned that solitude doesn't always help after war. It only makes the silence louder." He chuckled, A deep, tired sound. Wise words. You sound like one of our philosophers. Or maybe your philosophers sound like soldiers, Lena said with a smirk. They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the planet turn. Beneath that soft blue curve lived billions of humans, and now hundreds of thousands of Zaurians slowly finding their place among them. Refugees had become citizens. Soldiers had become builders. Enemies of circumstance had become allies. Zarek's voice broke the silence. When we first arrived, we thought you were naive. We thought your smiles were masks, tricks to hide some grand scheme. Lena turned her head, slightly curious. And now, Zarek smiled faintly. Now I think the galaxy is lucky you smiled. She laughed softly. Not everyone thinks so. There are whispers across the stars, worlds that don't understand how Earth survived the Karath. They think we must have made a pact with something dark. Perhaps you did, Zarek said. Perhaps you made a pact with compassion. A dangerous power, one your enemies will never understand. Her eyes softened at that. You sound like you're finally starting to trust us. Zarek looked at her fully then. General, trust was earned long ago, on the day your people stood beside mine, without asking what it would cost. He turned his gaze back to the planet below. The Karath feared power, domination, control. They thought victory came from crushing others. But you, humans, fight differently. You offer a hand before you draw a blade. And when you fight, it's not for conquest. It's for each other. That is why you won. Lena didn't respond immediately. She simply nodded, her eyes glistening faintly. We've had our share of wars. We've made mistakes that nearly ended us. Maybe that's why we learned compassion is our only weapon that doesn't destroy us from within. A transmission alert chimed, breaking the quiet. Lena tapped her earpiece. Go ahead. A voice replied through static. General, the Council confirmed it. The Galactic Assembly wants to send an envoy to Earth. They want to discuss an alliance. Lena's brow rose slightly. The same assembly that ignored the Zaurians' plea for aid? Yes, ma'am, came the hesitant answer. They're saying the humans and Zaurians together represent a stabilizing force. They want to talk terms. Lena smirked faintly and looked at Zarek. Seems your galaxy has noticed our little partnership. Zarek's expression was unreadable, though a spark of pride flickered behind his eyes. Good. Let them come. Let them see what happens when humans offer more than pity. Lena folded her arms. And what will they see, Commander? They'll see that when the universe came seeking shelter, he said quietly, you offered a home and a reason to hope again. The two stood in silence for a long moment after that, watching as a group of children, half human, half Zaurian, played in the artificial gardens of the station's lower deck. Their laughter echoed faintly through the comm's feed, pure and innocent. It was a sound that neither species had heard in far too long. War had taken much, but it had not taken everything. Humanity's gift was simple yet profound. They built where others destroyed. They reached out where others retreated. They smiled, even when surrounded by the darkness of the cosmos. And in that smile, there was defiance, kindness, and an unshakable belief that no species, no matter how broken, was beyond redemption. As the artificial sunrise lit the edge of Earth horizon, Zarek turned to Lena one last time. Your people, he said softly, you could have turned us away. You could have demanded tribute, servitude, anything. But instead, you gave us a place beside you. Why? Lena looked toward the rising light. Because that's what we wish someone had done for us when humanity stood alone. The dawn flooded the viewport, washing both of them in golden light. It was the light of a new era, not for one world, but for two. And far across the galaxy, where old powers whispered in fear and fading empires trembled, one truth spread quietly among the stars. When humanity offered refuge, they did not just give shelter. They offered strength, weapons, and a smile that promised, you are not alone.